The cowboy's breath formed white clouds in the pre-dawn darkness as he stepped out of the bunkhouse and stopped dead in his tracks, his eyes catching something that made his heart skip in a way he could not explain. Delicate footprints pressed into the fresh snow that had fallen during the night, small and purposeful, leading away from town toward the mountains where no sensible person should be heading alone in December of 1884. Lucas Brennan stood there for a long moment, the cold air burning his lungs as he studied those tracks. They were fresh, maybe an hour old at most, and whoever had made them was wearing boots too thin for this weather. He glanced back at the bunkhouse where the other ranch hands still slept, then at the main house where his boss would be rising soon to start the day's work. Lucas had responsibilities. He had cattle to tend and fences to mend. But something about those footprints called to him with an urgency he could not ignore. He went back inside, moving quietly so as not to wake the others, and gathered his warmest coat, his rifle, extra ammunition, matches, and the dried meat from his pack. Within 10 minutes he was mounted on his sorrel mare, following those tracks north out of Rhyolite, Nevada, into country that grew more dangerous with every mile. The sun rose slowly, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold. Lucas kept his eyes on the footprints, noting how they wandered occasionally, as if the person making them was tired or uncertain of their direction. He urged his horse into a faster walk, worry gnawing at his gut. Whoever this was, they were in trouble. Lucas was 24 years old, tall and broad-shouldered from years of hard work, with dark hair that fell past his collar and eyes the color of strong coffee. He had been working ranches since he was 14, moving from place to place, never quite finding somewhere that felt like home. His father had died when Lucas was young, and his mother had remarried a man who made it clear that Lucas was not welcome. So he had left, learning the ways of cattle and horses and the hard life of the open range. He had been in Rhyolite for 6 months now, working for the Triple Creek Ranch. It was decent work with fair pay, but like everywhere else, it felt temporary. Lucas sometimes wondered if he would spend his whole life drifting, never putting down roots, never finding whatever it was he was searching for. The footprints led him higher into the foothills, where pine trees grew thick and the snow lay deeper. His horse struggled through some of the drifts, and Lucas dismounted to lead her, his own boots breaking trail. He called out several times, his voice echoing through the quiet forest, but received no answer. It was nearly noon when he finally saw her. She was sitting beneath a massive pine tree, her back against the trunk, her arms wrapped around herself. Even from a distance, Lucas could see she was shivering violently. Her dark hair had come loose from its pins and hung around her face in tangled waves. Her dress was dark blue, soaked at the hem where it had dragged through the snow, and her coat was far too thin for this weather. "Madam," Lucas called out, not wanting to startle her. "Madam, are you all right?" Her head lifted slowly, and he found himself looking into the most striking green eyes he had ever seen. They were clouded with cold and exhaustion, but there was intelligence there, and something else, a fierce determination that had kept her moving long after most people would have given up. "Stay back," she said, her voice hoarse. She tried to stand, but her legs would not support her, and she slid back down against the tree trunk. Lucas stopped where he was, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "I am not going to hurt you. My name is Lucas Brennan. I work at the Triple Creek Ranch south of Rhyolite. I saw your footprints this morning and followed them. You are in a bad way, madam. Let me help you." She studied him for a long moment, her teeth chattering so hard he could hear them from where he stood. Finally, she nodded. "Katherine," she said. "Katherine James." Lucas moved quickly then, shrugging out of his heavy coat and draping it around her shoulders before she could protest. Up close, he could see that her lips were blue, and her hands were an alarming shade of white. He had seen frostbite before and knew they needed to get her warm soon or she would lose fingers, maybe worse. "Can you tell me what happened?" he asked gently as he knelt beside her, rubbing her hands between his own to try to restore circulation. "Why are you out here alone?" Catherine's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back fiercely. "I was on the stage from Virginia City. We were attacked yesterday afternoon, bandits. They took everything, the strong box, the passengers' valuables, everything. They shot the driver." Her voice broke slightly. "He was kind to me. He did not deserve that." Lucas felt a surge of anger but kept his voice calm. "What happened to the other passengers?" "There were only 2 others, a married couple. The bandits took them with them when they left, along with the horses. I think they planned to ransom them. The woman's husband is wealthy, owns mines in Virginia City. I hid under the stage during the shooting. When they left, I tried to help the driver, but he was already gone." She closed her eyes. "I knew I could not stay there. It was getting dark and starting to snow. I remembered the driver saying that Rhyolite was northwest, maybe 10 miles. I thought I could make it. You walked all night in the snow." Lucas could not keep the disbelief from his voice. "I did not have a choice." Katherine met his eyes, and he saw steel there beneath the exhaustion. "I was not going to sit there and freeze to death waiting for someone who might never come." Lucas found himself admiring her courage even as he worried about her condition. "We need to get you warm. Can you ride?" "I think so." He helped her to her feet, supporting most of her weight as they made their way to his horse. Getting her into the saddle was difficult. Her limbs were stiff with cold, and she could barely grip the saddle horn, but eventually they managed it. Lucas swung up behind her, wrapping one arm around her waist to hold her steady while he took the reins with his other hand. Katherine sagged back against his chest, and he could feel the violent tremors that shook her body. He urged the horse into a careful walk back the way they had come, holding Katherine close to share his body heat. "Stay awake," he told her when he felt her head begin to nod forward. "Talk to me, Katherine. Where are you from?" "San Francisco," she murmured. "Originally." "My parents died 2 years ago. Yellow fever. I have been working as a teacher in Virginia City, but the school closed. Not enough students. I was traveling to Carson City. I have an aunt there who said she could get me a position at the school where she teaches." "You are a teacher." Lucas tried to keep her talking, knowing that if she fell asleep in her condition she might not wake up. "I am, or I was. I loved it." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "The children were wonderful, so eager to learn. But when the mines started closing, families left. By the end, I only had 6 students." Lucas felt her shiver again and tightened his arm around her. "We will get you to the doctor in Rhyolite. He is a good man. He will take care of you." "My things," Katherine said suddenly. "Everything I owned was on that stage. My clothes, my books, the photograph of my parents. It is all gone." "I am sorry," Lucas said, and meant it. He knew what it was like to lose everything, to have nothing but what you could carry. "But you are alive. That is what matters." They rode in silence for a while, making slow progress through the snow. Lucas kept checking to make sure Katherine was still conscious, speaking to her whenever her head began to droop. She answered his questions in a dreamy voice, telling him about San Francisco, about the school where her mother had taught her to read, about the garden her father had kept where roses bloomed year-round in the mild coastal climate. "I miss the ocean," she said at one point. "The way it sounds at night. Nevada is so dry, so harsh. I'm not sure I will ever get used to it." "It has a beauty of its own," Lucas said. "Different from the ocean, but beautiful nonetheless. In spring, the desert blooms flowers everywhere, colors you would not believe. And the sunsets here are like nothing else in the world. You sound like you love it. Lucas considered that. I suppose I do. I have been a lot of places, but something about this land feels right to me. Like maybe I was meant to end up here. Katherine turned her head slightly to look up at him, and Lucas felt something shift in his chest at the way her green eyes searched his face. That is a nice thought, she said softly. Being meant for somewhere. I have felt like I have been drifting since my parents died, never quite belonging anywhere. I know the feeling, Lucas admitted. By the time they reached Rhyolite, the sun was beginning to set. Lucas rode straight to the doctor's house, a neat clapboard building on the edge of town. Dr. Samuel Winters answered the door in his shirt sleeves, his spectacles perched on his nose, and took one look at Katherine before ushering them inside. Frostbite? He asked Lucas as he helped Katherine to a chair near the stove. I think so. I found her in the foothills this morning. She was caught in last night's storm. Dr. Winters worked quickly, examining Katherine's hands and feet, asking her questions about where it hurt and whether she could feel his touch. Lucas stood back, watching anxiously as the doctor cut away Katherine's ruined boots and began the slow process of warming her extremities. You got to her in time, Dr. Winters said finally. Another few hours and we would have been looking at amputation. As it is, she will keep all her fingers and toes, though they are going to hurt like the devil for the next few weeks. Lucas felt relief wash through him. Thank you, doctor. Do not thank me. Thank yourself for finding her. Dr. Winters turned to Katherine. You are going to need rest and warmth. At least a week, maybe 2, before you should even think about traveling. Do you have somewhere to stay in town? Katherine's face fell. No, I was only passing through, and I have no money. The bandits took everything. Lucas spoke before he could think better of it. She can stay at the ranch. We have a spare room in the main house. Mrs. Crawford will look after her. Dr. Winters raised an eyebrow but nodded. That will work, provided Mrs. Crawford agrees to it. She will, Lucas said with more confidence than he felt. He barely knew the ranch owner's wife, but she seemed like a kind woman. Surely she would not turn away someone in need. After Dr. Winters had finished bandaging Katherine's hands and feet and given Lucas a tin of salve with instructions for its application, Lucas borrowed the doctor's wagon and drove Katherine out to the Triple Creek Ranch. The main house was a sprawling adobe structure with a red tile roof and wide verandas. Warm light spilled from the windows as Lucas pulled up to the front door. Mrs. Emma Crawford was a handsome woman in her 50s with silver-streaked brown hair and a no-nonsense manner. She listened to Lucas's explanation with pursed lips, her sharp eyes taking in Katherine's bedraggled appearance and obvious exhaustion. Of course she can stay, Mrs. Crawford said finally. We cannot turn away someone in need. Lucas, help me get her to the guest room. Then you go tell my husband what happened. He will want to know about those bandits. The next hour passed in a flurry of activity. Mrs. Crawford heated water for a bath while Lucas carried Katherine to the guest room. Katherine was so exhausted she could barely keep her eyes open, but Mrs. Crawford shooed Lucas out and helped Katherine bathe and change into a borrowed nightgown. By the time Lucas checked on them again, Katherine was asleep in the narrow bed, her bandaged hands resting on top of the quilt. She is worn to the bone, Mrs. Crawford said quietly as she and Lucas stood in the doorway. But she is strong. I can see it in her. She will recover. Lucas nodded, unable to take his eyes off Katherine's sleeping face. In repose, she looked younger than he had thought, maybe 22 or 23. Her dark lashes lay against her pale cheeks, and her hair spread across the pillow like spilled ink. You did a good thing today, Lucas, Mrs. Crawford said. Following those footprints. A lot of men would have ignored them, told themselves it was not their business. I could not just leave her out there, Lucas said simply. Mrs. Crawford smiled. No, I do not suppose you could have. Lucas spent that night in the bunkhouse with the other ranch hands, but sleep eluded him. He kept seeing Katherine's green eyes, hearing the determination in her voice as she described walking all night through the snow rather than give up and die. She was unlike any woman he had met before, refined and educated. Yes, but with a core of strength that matched the hardiest cowboy he knew. He told himself it was foolish to think about her that way. She was a teacher, a city woman who would move on as soon as she was well enough to travel. He was just a ranch hand with no prospects beyond his next paycheck. There was no future there, no matter how his heart had lurched when she looked up at him. But knowing that did not stop him from thinking about her. The next morning, Lucas finished his chores as quickly as possible and went to the main house to check on Katherine. Mrs. Crawford met him at the door with a knowing smile. "She is awake and asking for you," Mrs. Crawford said. "I told her you were the one who found her. She wants to thank you properly." Katherine was sitting up in bed, propped against pillows when Lucas entered the guest room. Her color was better today, though her bandaged hands rested carefully in her lap. She smiled when she saw him, and Lucas felt that strange shifting in his chest again. "Lucas," she said warmly, "Mrs. Crawford told me everything you did, following my tracks, riding out to find me, bringing me here. I owe you my life." "You do not owe me anything," Lucas said, uncomfortable with her gratitude. He twisted his hat in his hands, suddenly aware of how rough he must look compared to the kind of men she was probably used to. Anyone would have done the same. "No," Katherine said firmly. "They would not have. Most people would have assumed the tracks were made by someone who knew what they were doing, who did not need help. You saw them and knew someone was in trouble. That says something about who you are." Lucas did not know what to say to that, so he changed the subject. "How are you feeling? Dr. Winters said your hands and feet will hurt for a while." "They do hurt," Katherine admitted, "but I am grateful to still have them. It could have been so much worse." She paused, studying him with those remarkable green eyes. "Mrs. Crawford said you work here as a ranch hand. Have you been here long?" "About 6 months. Before that I was working a spread up near Elko." Lucas pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down, still holding his hat. "I have been working ranches since I was 14. Learned everything I know from trail bosses and old cowboys who took pity on a green kid." "You like the work." "I do. It is honest work and I am good at it. Cattle, horses, mending fence, breaking broncs, I can do it all. The pay is decent and I sleep under a roof most nights." "That is more than a lot of men can say." Katherine tilted her head thoughtfully. "But you move around a lot. Why is that?" Lucas considered the question. It was more complicated than he wanted to explain to someone he barely knew, but something about Katherine made him want to be honest. "I suppose I have been looking for something. I am not sure what. Somewhere that feels like home, maybe. I have never really had that." "I understand that feeling," Katherine said softly. "After my parents died, I felt adrift. Teaching helped, having a purpose, being needed by the children. But Virginia City never felt like home. It was just a place I was staying until I could figure out what came next." They talked for over an hour, their conversation ranging from Katherine's childhood in San Francisco to Lucas's memories of learning to rope from an old vaquero in Texas. Lucas found himself relaxing, telling her stories he had not shared with anyone in years. Katherine listened with genuine interest, laughing at his descriptions of his early failures at bronc riding and asking thoughtful questions about the places he had been. When Mrs. Crawford came to bring Katherine lunch, she gave Lucas a pointed look. "Do not tire her out. She needs her rest." "I am fine," Katherine protested, but her eyelids were drooping. Lucas stood. "I should get back to work anyway. I will check on you later if that is all right." "I would like that." Katherine said with a smile that made Lucas's heart beat faster. Over the next week, Lucas visited Katherine every day. At first, he told himself he was just checking to make sure she was recovering properly, but he knew that was a lie. The truth was he looked forward to those visits more than anything else in his day. Katherine was smart and funny, with a quick wit that kept him on his toes. She asked him about his work and seemed genuinely interested in his answers. In turn, she told him about teaching, about the books she loved, about her dreams of starting her own school someday where children could learn regardless of whether their families could pay. "Education should not be only for the wealthy," she said passionately one afternoon as they sat together in the parlor. Her hands had healed enough that she could move them without too much pain, though the bandages still remained. "Every child deserves the chance to read, to learn mathematics and history and science. Knowledge is power. It opens doors that would otherwise remain closed." Lucas, who had learned to read from a ranch cook's wife when he was 16, understood exactly what she meant. "You would be good at running your own school. You have the passion for it. Passion is not enough. I would need money to buy or rent a building, to purchase books and supplies. And I would need students whose families could afford to send them, at least at first, until I could build up enough savings to offer scholarships." Katherine sighed. "It is just a dream. A nice one, but not very practical." "Dreams are not supposed to be practical," Lucas said. "They are supposed to be worth reaching for." Katherine looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. "You are not what I expected, Lucas Brennan." "What did you expect?" "I am not sure. Someone rougher, maybe, more like the cowboys in the dime novels, all swagger and no substance." "But you are thoughtful. You listen when people talk. You care about things beyond yourself." She paused, color rising in her cheeks. "I am glad it was you who found my footprints that morning." Lucas felt heat in his own face. "I am glad, too." The air between them seemed charged suddenly, full of things neither of them was quite ready to say. Lucas cleared his throat. "I should let you rest." "Lucas, wait." Katherine reached out and touched his hand, her bandaged fingers gentle against his calloused ones. "Will you tell me more about the ranch? I have been cooped up in this house for days. I want to hear about the outside world, even if I cannot see it yet." So Lucas told her about the cattle they were preparing to move to winter pasture, about the mare that had foaled unexpectedly in the barn, about the coyotes he had heard singing in the hills at dawn. He described the way the land looked under snow, the way ice formed on the creek in patterns like lace. Katherine listened with her eyes closed, a small smile on her lips, and Lucas thought he had never seen anything more beautiful. By the end of the second week, Dr. Winters pronounced Katherine well enough to begin moving around. Her hands were still tender and would be for some time, but she had full use of them. Her feet had healed enough that she could walk, though Dr. Winters cautioned her against long distances for a while yet. The first thing Katherine did was insist on helping Mrs. Crawford with household tasks. "I cannot just sit around being waited on," she told the older woman firmly. "I am not used to being idle. Please, let me help." Mrs. Crawford agreed, with the condition that Katherine take frequent breaks and not overtax herself. Soon Katherine was helping with cooking and mending, tasks she could do despite her healing hands. Lucas would come in from work to find her in the kitchen with Mrs. Crawford, the two women talking and laughing like old friends. The sight made something warm bloom in his chest. One evening, about 3 weeks after Lucas had found Katherine, the ranch owner, Mr. Henry Crawford, called Lucas into his study. Mr. Crawford was a lean, weathered man in his 60s with shrewd blue eyes and a reputation for fairness. "Sit down, Lucas," Mr. Crawford said, gesturing to a chair. "I want to talk to you about Miss James." Lucas felt his stomach tighten. "Sir, my wife tells me you have been spending a good deal of time with her, that the two of you have become friendly." "Yes, sir." Lucas met the older man's eyes. "Is that a problem?" "That depends." Mr. Crawford leaned back in his chair. "What are your intentions toward her?" Lucas had been asking himself the same question for days. "I do not know, sir. I like her. More than like her, if I am being honest. But I am just a ranch hand. She is an educated woman, a teacher. I have nothing to offer her." "That is not true," Mr. Crawford said quietly. "You have a steady job, good character, and from what I have seen, you are a harder worker than most men I have known. That is not nothing, Lucas. It is not enough for a woman like Katherine. She deserves more than a life of scraping by on a ranch hand's wages." Mr. Crawford studied him for a long moment. "Have you asked her what she wants, what she thinks she deserves?" Lucas was silent. "My wife and I married when I had nothing but a broken-down wagon and a dream of starting a ranch. She was a shopkeeper's daughter from Carson City, and her father thought she was crazy for choosing me. But she did choose me, and we built this place together over 30 years. We worked side by side, went without when we had to, celebrated every small victory. It has been a good life, Lucas. A rich life in the ways that matter." He paused. "Do not assume you know what will make Katherine happy. Talk to her. Be honest about your feelings. Let her make her own choice." Lucas left the study with his mind whirling. Mr. Crawford's words had struck deep. Because they were true, Lucas had been assuming Katherine would want things he could not provide. But he had never actually asked her what she wanted. He had been so caught up in his own insecurities that he had not considered she might be wrestling with her own uncertainties. He found Katherine in the parlor, sitting by the fire with a book. She looked up when he entered and smiled, marking her place with a finger. "You look troubled," she said. "Is everything all right?" Lucas sat down across from her, his hat in his hands as always. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What are your plans? When you leave here, I mean. Are you still planning to go to Carson City to live with your aunt?" Katherine's smile faded slightly. "I have been thinking about that. My aunt wrote back. Mrs. Crawford helped me send a letter last week. The teaching position she mentioned has been filled. She says I am still welcome to come stay with her while I look for work, but—" She trailed off, looking down at her book. "But what?" "But I am not sure that is what I want anymore." Katherine met his eyes. "These past few weeks have been the happiest I have been since my parents died. Mrs. Crawford has been teaching me to cook things I never learned growing up. We always had a housekeeper who did the cooking. And I have been helping her with the account books. She says I have a good head for figures." She paused. "I like the work, Lucas. I like feeling useful in a practical way, not just standing in front of a classroom, and I like it here. I like the people, the landscape, even the harsh winters. I feel like I could belong here." Lucas's heart was pounding. "Could you be happy here, really happy? It is not an easy life. Winters are hard, summers are brutal. The work is never done and the pay is not great. I think happiness has less to do with ease and more to do with purpose and connection," Katherine said carefully. "I felt purposeful when I was teaching, but I never felt connected to a place or to people the way I do here, the way I do." She stopped, color flooding her cheeks. "The way you do what?" Lucas leaned forward, hardly daring to breathe. "The way I do when I am with you," Katherine said in a rush. "I know it is foolish. We have only known each other a few weeks, but I feel more myself with you than I have with anyone since my parents died. You listen to me. You take my thoughts seriously. You do not treat me like I am fragile or foolish, and when you look at me, I feel." She pressed her lips together, looking away. Lucas crossed the space between them in 2 strides, kneeling beside her chair. "When I look at you, I see the strongest, most remarkable woman I have ever met. I see someone who walked all night through a blizzard rather than give up. Someone who cares about children learning to read more than she cares about fine dresses and fancy parties. Someone I could talk to for hours and never get bored. Someone I think I could love for the rest of my life if she would let me. Catherine's eyes were bright with tears. Lucas. I know I do not have much to offer, Lucas continued quickly. Just a job and a bunk and whatever I have saved. But I am a hard worker and I am honest, and I promise if you give me a chance, I will do everything in my power to make you happy. You already make me happy, Katherine whispered. She reached out with her still healing hands and cupped his face. You saved my life, Lucas. But more than that, you gave me a reason to want to live it. I was so lost before the stage was robbed. I was going through the motions, teaching because it was what I knew how to do, but I had no joy in it. These weeks here with you have reminded me what joy feels like. Lucas turned his head to press a kiss to her palm. Stay, he said simply. Stay here. Be with me. We will figure out the rest together. Yes, Katherine said, and then she was leaning forward and Lucas was meeting her halfway, their lips coming together in a kiss that felt like coming home. They sat that way for a long time, foreheads pressed together, hands clasped, making whispered promises about a future they would build together. When Mrs. Crawford came to check on them, she took one look at their faces and smiled knowingly before retreating without a word. Over the next few weeks, Lucas and Katherine spent every spare moment together. Lucas taught Katherine to ride, starting with the gentlest mare in the string. Katherine was nervous at first, but she learned quickly, her natural determination serving her well. Soon she was riding out with Lucas when he checked fence lines, the two of them talking and laughing as they covered the miles. Katherine, in turn, continued her reading lessons with Lucas. He could read well enough for practical purposes, but she introduced him to novels and poetry, to stories that transported him to places he had never been. They would sit by the fire in the evenings, Katherine reading aloud while Lucas worked on repairing tack, her voice bringing to life adventures and romances that made his own story with her feel both ordinary and extraordinary. Christmas came, and Mrs. Crawford insisted on a celebration. She and Katherine cooked a feast, while Lucas and Mr. Crawford brought in a tree from the hills and decorated it with strings of popcorn and paper ornaments. On Christmas morning, Lucas gave Katherine a new pair of boots, practical and warm, but with delicate stitching along the sides that made them beautiful as well. Katherine gave him a book of poems she had copied out by hand, each page filled with her neat script, passages she thought he would love. I know you cannot carry many books when you are working, she said shyly, but this one is small enough to fit in a saddlebag, so you can have something to read when you are out on the range. Lucas held the book carefully, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gift. I will treasure this, he said hoarsely. Thank you, Katherine. Winter deepened into January of 1885, and life on the ranch settled into a comfortable rhythm. Lucas worked long days moving cattle, mending equipment, preparing for spring. Katherine helped Mrs. Crawford and began teaching reading to the handful of children whose families worked on the ranch. She set up a small schoolroom in one corner of the barn, and 3 afternoons a week she taught reading, writing, and arithmetic to 5 eager students ranging in age from 6 to 12. Lucas would sometimes stop by to watch her teach, standing quietly in the doorway so as not to disturb the lesson. Katherine was a natural teacher, patient and encouraging, making learning feel like an adventure rather than a chore. The children adored her, and Lucas could see she was coming alive in a way she had not been before, her purpose renewed. One evening in late January, Lucas asked Katherine to take a walk with him despite the cold. They bundled up in coats and scarves and walked down to the creek, which was frozen solid. The moon was nearly full, reflecting off the snow and ice until the whole world seemed to glow silver. "Katherine," Lucas said when they reached the spot where the creek widened into a pool, "I need to ask you something important." Katherine turned to him, her green eyes luminous in the moonlight. "What is it?" Lucas pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, nothing fancy, just a simple silver band with a small blue stone, but he had spent most of his savings on it. He dropped to one knee in the snow, looking up at the woman who had captured his heart so completely. "I know we have not known each other long," Lucas said, "and I know I cannot give you all the things you might have had if you had married someone else, someone with more money or better prospects. But I love you, Katherine. I love your strength and your intelligence and your kindness. I love the way you laugh and the way you look at the world like it is full of possibilities. I love who I am when I am with you. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife and build a life with me here?" Katherine was crying, tears streaming down her face as she nodded frantically. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Lucas, of course I will marry you. I do not want someone with more money or better prospects. I want you, just as you are." Lucas stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply. Katherine kissed him back with equal fervor, her arms around his neck, and Lucas felt like the luckiest man alive. They were married 6 weeks later, in March, when the worst of winter had passed. It was a small ceremony in the parlor of the ranch house, with Mr. and Mrs. Crawford as witnesses, and the ranch hands crowded in to watch. Katherine wore a dress Mrs. Crawford had helped her make from fabric Lucas had bought in town, simple blue cotton that matched her eyes. Lucas wore his best shirt and pants, his hair neatly trimmed, his hands shaking slightly as he took Katherine's and promised to love and cherish her all his days. After the ceremony, Mrs. Crawford served cake and coffee, and the ranch hands took turns congratulating the newlyweds. Several of them offered Lucas mock condolences on his loss of freedom, but Lucas just laughed and pulled Katherine close, knowing he had never been more free than he was in choosing to spend his life with her. Mr. Crawford pulled Lucas aside before the celebration ended. "I have been thinking," the older man said. "You are a good worker, Lucas, and you have proven yourself over and over this past year. I would like to offer you a position as foreman. The pay is better, and it comes with the small house on the east side of the property. It is not much, just 3 rooms, but it is yours if you want it." Lucas was stunned. "Sir, I do not know what to say. That is more than generous. You have earned it. And I figure a newly married man should have his own place to start his family." Mr. Crawford smiled. "What do you say?" "Yes," Lucas said immediately. "Thank you, sir. You will not regret this." "I know I will not." Lucas shared the news with Katherine as they rode out to see the house that evening. It was small, as Mr. Crawford had said, but solidly built with a good roof and a stone fireplace. The main room served as kitchen and living space, with a bedroom in the back and a small storage room that could be converted into another bedroom eventually. "It is perfect," Katherine said, walking through the empty rooms with shining eyes. "We can make curtains for the windows and get a table and chairs. Maybe build some shelves for books. Oh, Lucas, it is going to be wonderful." Over the next few weeks, they moved into their new home, gradually filling it with furniture Lucas built and items Katherine purchased or made. Mrs. Crawford gave them dishes and linens, and the other ranch hands contributed what they could: a lamp here, a cooking pot there. By the end of April, the little house felt like a home. Lucas loved being foreman. The work was harder and came with more responsibility, but he thrived on the challenge. He managed the other ranch hands with a fair but firm hand, earning their respect through his own hard work and willingness to tackle the worst jobs alongside them. Mr. Crawford gave him more autonomy as the months passed. trusting his judgment on everything from where to graze the cattle to which horses were ready to be sold. Katherine continued teaching the ranch children and began taking in mending and sewing from families in town to earn extra money. She was saving for books, she told Lucas, dreaming still of her own school someday. Lucas encouraged her, setting aside a portion of his wages each month to add to her school fund. Their first summer together was hard work but filled with joy. They rose before dawn and worked until after dark, but they worked together, supporting and encouraging each other. In the evenings, they would sit on their small porch and watch the sun set over the mountains, Katherine leaning against Lucas's side, his arm around her shoulders. "Are you happy?" Lucas asked her one night as they watched the sky turn from gold to purple to deep blue. "More than I ever imagined I could be," Katherine said honestly. "This life is nothing like what I thought I wanted, but it is everything I need. You are everything I need." Lucas kissed the top of her head. "I love you. I love you too." In late September, Katherine discovered she was pregnant. She told Lucas one evening after dinner, her face glowing with joy and nerves. "Are you happy?" she asked anxiously. "I know we have not been married long. Maybe it is too soon." "Too soon." Lucas swept her up in his arms and spun her around, laughing. "Katherine, this is the best news I have ever heard. We are going to have a baby, our baby. How could I be anything but happy?" The pregnancy was not easy. Katherine was sick most mornings for the first few months, and as winter set in, she tired easily. But she remained in good spirits, continuing to teach until she was too large to comfortably stand for long periods. Lucas was endlessly solicitous, doing everything he could to make her comfortable, rubbing her aching back and feet, making sure she ate even when she did not feel like it. Their son was born in June of 1886, a squalling, red-faced infant with dark hair and his mother's green eyes. They named him Thomas after Lucas's father. Lucas held his son for the first time with tears streaming down his face, overwhelmed by the rush of love and protectiveness he felt for this tiny person. "He is perfect," Lucas whispered. "You are perfect. Thank you, Katherine." "Thank you for giving me this." Katherine, exhausted but radiant, smiled up at him. "We made him together. He is ours." Thomas was a good baby, easy-tempered and healthy. Katherine took to motherhood naturally, balancing caring for their son with running their household, and eventually returning to teaching part-time. Lucas was a devoted father, coming home each day eager to hold his son and marveling at each new development: the first smile, the first tooth, the first time Thomas grabbed hold of Lucas's finger with his tiny fist. "He is going to be strong," Lucas said proudly. "Look at that grip." "He is going to be smart," Katherine countered. "Look at the way he studies everything. He is taking it all in." "He is going to be strong and smart," Lucas said. "The best of both of us." As Thomas grew from infant to toddler, their little house rang with laughter and the sounds of childhood. Lucas built a wooden horse for Thomas to ride and taught him to pet the ranch animals gently. Katherine read to him for hours, fostering a love of stories. By the time Thomas was 2, he could recognize letters and count to 10, and he followed his father around the ranch like a shadow whenever Lucas was home. Life was good, better than Lucas had ever dared to dream. He had a job he loved, a home, a wife he adored, and a son who was the light of his life. The restlessness that had driven him from place to place for so many years was gone, replaced by a deep contentment. He had found what he had been searching for all along: not a place, exactly, though he loved the ranch and the harsh Nevada landscape. What he had found was belonging, connection, purpose. He had found a family. In the spring of 1888, Katherine gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Sarah. She had Lucas's dark hair and Katherine's delicate features, and from the moment she entered the world, she had both her parents wrapped around her tiny finger. Thomas, now nearly 2, was fascinated by his baby sister and wanted to help with everything, fetching diapers, singing to her when she cried, proudly showing her his toys though she was far too young to appreciate them. The years that followed were filled with the ordinary, extraordinary moments of family life. Lucas continued to excel as foreman, and Mr. Crawford began talking about retiring eventually and selling Lucas a partnership in the ranch. Katherine's school fund grew steadily, though she was no longer sure she wanted to open her own school. Teaching the ranch children a few afternoons a week and raising her own children felt like purpose enough. "Maybe when Thomas and Sarah are older," she told Lucas one night as they lay in bed, listening to their children sleep in the next room. "Maybe then I will think about a school again. But for now, this is exactly where I want to be." Lucas pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "I still cannot believe sometimes that you are really mine, that this life is real. It feels too good to be true." "It is real," Katherine said firmly, "and it is what we built together, every bit of it." She paused. "Do you ever think about that morning, when you found my footprints in the snow?" "I think about it all the time. How easily I could have ignored them, told myself it was not my concern. How different my life would be if I had not followed them." "My life would be over," Katherine said quietly. "I would have died out there if you had not found me. But I did find you, and you found me right back. We found each other, Katherine, and I am never letting you go." In 1890, their third child was born, another son they named Peter. The little house was bursting at the seams now with 5 people. So Lucas spent the winter building an addition, 2 more bedrooms so the children could have their own spaces, and he and Katherine could have privacy. Mr. Crawford donated the lumber, and the other ranch hands helped with the construction, raising walls and putting on a roof in record time. The children grew, thriving in the clean air and wide open spaces of the ranch. Thomas showed a natural talent with horses and begged his father to teach him to ride. Sarah was quieter, more studious like her mother, happiest when she was looking at books or helping Katherine in the garden they had planted behind the house. Peter was the family clown, always laughing, always finding mischief to get into. By 1892, Lucas had indeed become a partner in the ranch. Mr. Crawford had made the offer formal on Lucas's 30th birthday, selling him a 30% stake for a price Lucas could afford by taking out a loan at the bank in town. It meant more responsibility and longer hours, but it also meant security for his family's future. Lucas was now part owner of the land he worked, and it filled him with pride every time he thought about it. Katherine's parents would have been proud of her too, Lucas thought. She had built a good life for herself despite losing them so young. She was a respected member of the community, known for her kindness and her work with the children. Women in town sought her advice on everything from child rearing to how to make their household budgets stretch further. She had found her place in the world, carved out a space where she was valued and loved. One winter evening in 1893, nearly 9 years after Lucas had found Katherine's footprints in the snow, the family gathered around the fireplace in their cozy house. Thomas, now 7, was reading aloud from a book of adventure stories. Sarah, 5, was working on her letters with fierce concentration. Peter, 3, was building an elaborate structure with wooden blocks. Katherine sat in her rocking chair, mending clothes, while Lucas carved a new toy horse for Peter from a block of pine. Lucas looked around at his family, at his beautiful wife, at his healthy, happy children, at the warm, comfortable home they had created together, and felt his throat tighten with emotion. This was what mattered. This was what made life worth living. Not wealth or fame or adventure, but this: love, connection, the daily miracle of ordinary life. "What are you thinking about?" Katherine asked softly, glancing up from her mending with a knowing smile. "Just how lucky I am," Lucas said. "How grateful I am for that snowstorm 9 years ago. For the choice to follow those footprints. For every choice that led me to you." Katherine set down her mending and crossed to where Lucas sat. She settled onto his lap, fitting herself against him the way she had 1,000 times before. "I am grateful too," she whispered. "For the storm, for your kindness, for your love, for this life we have built, for everything." Lucas wrapped his arms around her, holding her close while their children played around them. Through the window, he could see snow beginning to fall, white flakes drifting down in the darkness. He thought about another snowfall 9 years ago when he had stepped out of the bunkhouse and seen footprints leading into the wilderness. He thought about the choice he had made to follow them, a choice that had changed everything. "I love you," he said against Katherine's hair. "I love you too," she replied. "Always." The fire crackled, the children laughed, the snow fell softly outside, and Lucas Brennan knew with absolute certainty that he was exactly where he was meant to be. He had followed a trail in the snow and found not just a woman in need of rescue, but his entire future. He had found love, family, home, purpose. He had found everything he had been searching for without even knowing he was searching. And he had found it all in the most unlikely way, in delicate footprints, pressed into fresh snow on a winter morning in Nevada. In the courage of a woman who refused to give up. In the choice to follow his instincts and see where they led. It had led him here, to this moment, to this life, to this perfect, imperfect, miraculous reality. Years continued to pass, marked by the changing seasons and the milestones of their children's lives. Thomas grew into a skilled horseman and invaluable help on the ranch, working alongside his father from the time he was 10 years old. Sarah discovered a love of music and convinced her parents to buy a second-hand piano, which she practiced on for hours each day until she could play beautifully. Peter developed his father's wanderlust, but channeled it into exploration of the land around the ranch, returning from his adventures with pockets full of interesting rocks and stories of what he had seen. In 1895, Katherine finally opened her school, though not in the way she had originally imagined. Instead of a separate building in town, she converted part of the barn into a proper schoolroom and began taking students from neighboring ranches and from Rhyolite itself. Word spread that Mrs. Brennan was an excellent teacher who charged only what families could afford, and soon she had 15 students of various ages. Lucas built proper desks and a large chalkboard, and Katherine organized her curriculum with the same care and attention she brought to everything she did. "You did it," Lucas told her proudly on the first day of school as they watched the children file into the barn. "You built your school." "We built it," Katherine corrected. "I could not have done any of this without you, Lucas. Without your support, your encouragement, your willingness to build furniture and haul supplies and watch the children when I needed time to prepare lessons. This is ours, just like everything else." Lucas kissed her temple. "I am proud of you." "I am proud of us," Katherine said. Mr. Crawford retired in 1896, selling his remaining stake in the ranch to Lucas and moving to Carson City to be near his daughter. It was bittersweet saying goodbye to the man who had given Lucas his first real chance, but Mr. Crawford assured him he was leaving the ranch in good hands. "You have made something of yourself, Lucas," Mr. Crawford said as they shook hands for the last time. "When you first came here, you were just another drifter cowboy. Now look at you, partner in a successful ranch, husband, father, respected member of the community. I am proud to have known you." "I would not be any of those things without you taking a chance on me," Lucas said, his voice rough with emotion. You gave me more than a job. You gave me a place to belong." "You earned it," Mr. Crawford said firmly. "Every bit of it. Take care of this place. Take care of your family. Be happy." "I will, sir. I promise." As the sole owner of the Triple Creek Ranch now, with the mortgage paid off and the operation running smoothly, Lucas had achieved a level of security and success he had never imagined possible for himself. He employed 12 ranch hands year-round, more during busy seasons, and treated them all fairly, remembering what it was like to be on the other side of that relationship. Several of his employees had been with him for years, loyal and hardworking, and Lucas made sure they knew they were valued. The town of Rhyolite grew and changed around them. New businesses opened, a railroad spur was built connecting the town to the main line, and the population swelled with miners seeking their fortunes in the nearby hills. Through it all, the Triple Creek Ranch remained a constant, a thriving operation known for quality cattle and horses. Their children continued to grow and flourish. In 1898, Thomas turned 12 and announced he wanted to be a rancher like his father. Lucas could not have been more pleased, seeing his legacy carried forward in his eldest son. Sarah, 10 now, was as dedicated to her music as ever and performed at church socials and town gatherings, her beautiful playing drawing admiration from everyone who heard her. Peter, 8, had developed an interest in geology and talked endlessly about the rocks and minerals he found on his explorations, declaring he would be a scientist when he grew up. Katherine balanced teaching with motherhood with seemingly effortless grace, though Lucas knew how hard she worked to manage everything. She was up before dawn preparing lessons and breakfast, taught all morning, spent afternoons with their youngest children, made dinner, and often graded work or planned lessons late into the evening. Lucas helped whenever he could, taking over childcare duties when Katherine was teaching, handling household repairs and outdoor chores, making sure she took time to rest. "You work too hard," he told her one night as she sat at the kitchen table, lamplight illuminating the papers spread before her. "So do you," Katherine replied without looking up from the essay she was grading. "We both do what needs to be done." Lucas came up behind her and began massaging her shoulders. Katherine sighed and leaned back into his touch. "That feels wonderful. You should come to bed. Those papers will still be there in the morning." 5 more minutes, Katherine promised. "I am almost done." Lucas knew 5 minutes would turn into 30, so he simply pulled up a chair beside her and kept her company, occasionally offering opinions on student work when she asked. This, too, was love, not just the grand gestures and passionate moments, but the quiet companionship, the willingness to sit together even when you were both exhausted, the knowledge that you were partners in all things. In 1900, as the new century dawned, the Brennan family gathered for a photograph at a studio in town. It was expensive, but Lucas insisted, wanting to capture this moment when their family was young and whole and happy. In the photograph, Lucas and Katherine sit in the center, their children arranged around them. Thomas stands behind his father's chair, already tall and serious at 14. Sarah sits beside her mother, hands folded demurely, her dark hair in careful ringlets. Peter stands on the other side, barely able to hold still long enough for the exposure, a mischievous grin on his face. Looking at that photograph in later years, Lucas would remember exactly how he had felt in that moment, proud, grateful, content in a way he had never been before Katherine. The photograph captured the outward appearance of his family, but it could not capture the love that bound them together, the history they shared, the future they were building together. Time moved forward, as it always did. In 1903, Katherine gave birth to their 4th child, another daughter they named Emma after Mrs. Crawford. Thomas was 17 by then, essentially a junior partner in the ranch, working as hard as any man Lucas employed. Sarah was 15, teaching piano lessons to younger children and talking about becoming a music teacher herself one day. Peter was 13, still collecting rocks but also showing an interest in the ranch work, torn between his love of science and his love of the land. Lucas was 39 years old, weathered by years of sun and wind but still strong, still capable of a full day's work. Katherine was 36, as beautiful to him as the day he had found her in the snow, though now laugh lines bracketed her mouth and silver threads were beginning to appear in her dark hair. They had been married 18 years, and Lucas loved her more with each passing year if such a thing were possible. "Do you ever regret it?" Lucas asked her one night as they lay in bed, baby Emma sleeping in a cradle nearby. "The life you have with me, the choices you made." Katherine rolled over to face him, her green eyes serious in the moonlight that filtered through the curtains. "Never. Not for one single moment. Why would you ask me that? I just think sometimes about the life you could have had. If you had gone to Carson City, you might have married someone wealthy, someone who could have given you fine things and an easy life. You could be living in a mansion right now instead of a ranch house, wearing silk dresses instead of calico, having servants instead of doing all the work yourself." "Lucas Brennan, you listen to me." Katherine propped herself up on one elbow, her voice fierce. "I do not want a mansion or silk dresses or servants. I want this life, the one we built together. I want a husband who respects me and values my opinions and works beside me as a partner. I want children we are raising together to be good, thoughtful people. I want to teach because I love it, not because I have to. I want to go to bed every night next to the man I love and wake up every morning knowing I am exactly where I belong. That is not something money can buy, Lucas. And it is not something I would ever trade away." Lucas pulled her close, holding her tight. "I love you so much. I love you too. And I need you to trust that I know my own mind, that I know what makes me happy. You make me happy. This life makes me happy. Stop second-guessing the best decision I ever made." "What decision was that? Saying yes when you asked me to stay, saying yes when you asked me to marry you, saying yes to building this life with you, all of it, every bit of it. I would say yes 1,000 times over." In the years that followed, their children continued to grow into adults. Thomas married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring spread in 1905 and built a house on the edge of the Triple Creek property. He took over more and more of the ranch operations, allowing Lucas to gradually step back and enjoy more time with Katherine and their younger children. Sarah left for San Francisco in 1906 to study music at a conservatory, and though Lucas missed her terribly, he was proud of her for pursuing her dreams. Peter decided he wanted to study geology at the university in Reno and left in 1908, promising to come home for holidays and summer breaks. Emma grew up adored by her entire family, the baby who remained the baby even when she was no longer small. She had her mother's love of learning and her father's practical nature, a combination that served her well. Katherine continued teaching, though she had cut back her hours as she aged, preferring to focus on the younger students who needed the most attention. By 1910, Lucas was 46 years old and Katherine was 43. They were grandparents now. Thomas and his wife had welcomed a son in 1907 and a daughter in 1909. Lucas found he loved being a grandfather almost as much as he had loved being a father, enjoying the time he could spend with his grandchildren without the constant responsibility of raising them. One snowy December evening, 26 years almost to the day after Lucas had found Katherine's footprints, they sat together on their porch despite the cold, wrapped in blankets and watching the snow fall. It was a peaceful evening, quiet except for the whisper of snowflakes and the distant sound of cattle settling in for the night. "You remember the first time we sat together and watched the snow?" Katherine asked softly. "I remember," Lucas said. "We were right here on this porch not long after we were married. You said you thought you could be happy here." "I was right." Katherine leaned her head against his shoulder. "I have been so happy, Lucas. Even the hard times, the times when money was tight or the children were sick or we were worried about something, even those times, I was happy because I was going through them with you." "I feel the same way," Lucas said. "You gave me everything I never knew I needed. A home, a family, a purpose. Before you, I was just drifting. After you, I was finally living." They sat in silence for a while, watching the snow accumulate on the ground, on the fence posts, on the roof of the barn. Lucas thought about how different his life might have been if he had not followed those footprints all those years ago. He might still be drifting from ranch to ranch, never settling, never finding this bone-deep contentment. He might have married someone else, built a different life, but it would not have been this life, and he could not imagine anything better than what he had. "Thank you," he said suddenly. "For what?" "For being stubborn enough to walk all night through a blizzard. For choosing to stay when you could have left. For loving me even though I did not have much to offer. For building this life with me. For everything." Katherine lifted her head and kissed him softly. "Thank you for following my footprints, for seeing someone in need and choosing to help. For asking me to stay. For loving me exactly as I am. For being my partner in everything. For giving me the life I did not know I wanted but could not imagine living without." They went inside as the snow began to fall more heavily, back to the warm house they had built together, filled with memories of nearly 3 decades of love and life and family. Emma was at the kitchen table doing schoolwork, and she looked up with a smile when her parents came in. "It is really coming down out there," she said. "Think we will be snowed in tomorrow, probably," Lucas said, hanging up his coat and helping Katherine with hers. "Which means we can all sleep a bit later and have a lazy morning." "I will make pancakes," Katherine promised. "The real ones, with butter and syrup." Lucas built up the fire while Katherine checked on Emma's schoolwork, and then the 3 of them sat together in the warm room, talking about nothing in particular, just enjoying each other's company. These were the moments Lucas treasured most, not the big occasions or dramatic events, but the ordinary evenings when his family was together, and safe and happy. Later, after Emma had gone to bed, Lucas and Katherine lay together in their room listening to the wind outside and the creak of the house settling around them. "I hope it snows for days," Katherine murmured sleepily. "I love being snowed in with you." Lucas smiled in the darkness. "Me too." He drifted off to sleep holding his wife, grateful for every twist of fate that had brought them together, grateful for every day they had shared, grateful for the life they had built from such unlikely beginnings. A cowboy following footprints in the snow. A woman refusing to give up. 2 people finding each other when they both needed finding. It was not a fairy tale. There had been hard times, struggles, moments of doubt and worry. But it was real and it was theirs, this life they had created together, and Lucas would not have changed a single moment of it. The snow continued to fall through the night, covering the world in white, and in the morning, Lucas and Katherine woke to a landscape transformed, beautiful and pristine and full of possibility, much like the morning 26 years ago when everything had begun. They made pancakes as promised and spent the day together as a family. And when the snow finally stopped and the world returned to normal, they went back to their daily lives, back to work and school and all the routines that made up their existence. But they never forgot what had brought them together, never took for granted the miracle of having found each other against all odds. and on snowy winter mornings for the rest of their lives, Lucas would sometimes stand at the window and watch the snow fall, remembering a trail of footprints that had led him to his future, to his wife, to his home, to everything that mattered. Years continued their steady march forward. Sarah returned from San Francisco in 1912, newly married to a music professor she had met at the conservatory. They settled in Rhyolite, where Sarah opened a music school, finally fulfilling her dream of teaching. Peter graduated from the university in 1913 with a degree in geology and took a job with a mining company, though he visited the ranch frequently, never quite able to stay away from the land he loved. Thomas took over complete operation of the ranch in 1915, when Lucas finally retired at age 51. Katherine had retired from teaching the year before, deciding she wanted to spend her remaining years traveling with Lucas, visiting their children, and spoiling their grandchildren. They took a trip to San Francisco to see the city where Katherine had grown up, and Lucas held her hand as she showed him the house where she had lived with her parents, the school where her mother had taught, the beach where her father had taken her to collect shells. "It is strange being back here," Katherine said as they walked along the shore, the Pacific Ocean stretching endlessly before them. "It feels like a different life, like it happened to a different person." "Do you miss it?" Lucas asked. Katherine looked up at him and smiled. "Not even a little bit. This is lovely to visit, but Nevada is home now. You are home. Wherever you are, that is where I belong." They returned to the ranch and settled into a comfortable retirement. Lucas still helped Thomas when he was needed, but mostly he spent his days with Katherine, the two of them working in the garden she had expanded over the years, reading together, taking long rides across the land they had poured their lives into. They became the patriarch and matriarch of a growing family by 1920. They had 7 grandchildren with more on the way. On a December evening in 1920, 36 years after Lucas had found Katherine's footprints in the snow, the entire family gathered at the ranch house for a celebration. It was Lucas and Katherine's 35th wedding anniversary, and their children had organized a party with all their friends and neighbors. The house was full of laughter and music and love. 3 generations of Brennans gathered under one roof. At one point in the evening, Thomas stood and raised his glass. "I want to make a toast," he said, and the room fell quiet. "To my parents, Lucas and Katherine Brennan. Growing up, I watched you work together, support each other, love each other through good times and hard times. You showed me what a true partnership looks like, what real love looks like. You built something amazing here, not just this ranch, though that is impressive enough, but a family, a legacy, a life worth celebrating. Thank you for the example you have set, for the home you created, for the love you have shown not just to each other but to all of us. We are who we are because of you." "Hear, hear," everyone echoed, raising their glasses. Lucas looked at Katherine, saw tears streaming down her face, and pulled her close. "What do you say?" he asked softly. "Did we do all right?" "We did better than all right," Katherine whispered back. "We did wonderfully. Look at them, Lucas. Look at what we made." Lucas looked around the room at their children and grandchildren, at the friends who had become family, at the home they had built and filled with love. He thought about the frightened, stubborn woman he had found in the snow all those years ago, thought about the drifting cowboy he had been before that morning, and marveled at how far they had come. "I love you," he told Katherine, the same words he had spoken thousands of times over the past 36 years, words that never got old, never lost their power. "I love you too," Katherine said. "Forever." They danced that night, swaying together to music Sarah played on the piano, surrounded by everyone they loved, grateful for every moment that had led them to this place. And when the party finally ended and everyone had gone home or gone to bed, Lucas and Katherine stood together on their porch under a sky full of stars, holding hands the way they had for 36 years, knowing that whatever time they had left, they would face it together, just as they had faced everything else. The snow began to fall softly, and Katherine tilted her face up to catch the flakes on her cheeks, laughing with pure joy. Lucas watched her, this woman who had been his partner, his love, his everything for more than half his life, and felt his heart swell with gratitude so intense it was almost painful. "What are you thinking?" Katherine asked, catching him staring. "Just that I would follow your footprints anywhere," Lucas said. "Through snow, through desert, through whatever comes. As long as they lead to you, I will follow them." Katherine kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise, and Lucas knew with absolute certainty that he was the luckiest man who had ever lived. He had followed footprints in fresh snow and found not just a woman who needed saving, but the other half of his soul. He had found home, purpose, love, and family. He had found everything. And it had all started with a choice made on a cold December morning in 1884, the choice to follow a trail in the snow, to see where it led, to care about a stranger in need. That single choice had shaped the rest of his life, had given him everything that mattered, had led him to this moment, standing with his wife under falling snow, surrounded by the life they had built together. The snow continued to fall, covering the world in white, and Lucas and Katherine went inside together, hand in hand, ready for whatever came next, knowing that as long as they faced it together, they could handle anything. Their love story, which had begun with footprints in fresh snow, continued on, strong and steady and true, a testament to the power of following your heart, of choosing love, of building a life one day at a time with someone who sees you for who you truly are and loves you anyway. And every winter, when the first snow fell, Lucas would stand at the window and remember and give thanks for the footprints that had changed his life, for the woman who had made them, and for every moment they had shared since that cold December morning when a cowboy had followed a trail into the mountains and found his future waiting there in the snow.